is that many a times the researchers, those who are new, and also sometimes the researchers who have been writing, presenting in the conferences, make some minor, we can say, errors in understanding the variables. And so I thought that though it's very small component in nature, but it's very important in research. Whatever social science researches we carry, uh, wherever quantifications are there, then among these quantifications, when we follow the quantifications, do we really understand the very basic principles behind the quantification of any variable? What we are doing, whether is correct or wrong, we don't know many a times, and we just do it. And then someone comments on that, and then we say that itna mehnat liya hai, what we have done is there's so much of efforts has gone in, and why now to relook into, because the time has passed, correct? So my basic question is there anyone from political science or philosophy as well? History, philosophy, political science? No? So do I assume that there are people from the rest of the backgrounds, and there is no one from history, philosophy, and political science? Shall I assume that? Because largely the quantitative method or quantitative research design is used by the social scientists largely in economics, psychology, sociology. So largely whenever they have anything to do with the research, then they come across very few times history and political science, philosophy. These people, they come across the quantifications. They also do, but at some extent, not the larger scale. Shall I assume that we don't have, because they may have some problem in understanding them in that case, though it's very important component of research, uh, but they may think themselves that we are left out. Okay, shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm able to share now.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You are
sir. You are the co-host.
Okay, is my screen visible to all?
Let's get started, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, I wanted to talk about quantitative research design and the precautions when we carry the research with the help of quantitative research design. One can define this quantitative research design is in a way that the research design in which the quantifications of the variables is involved, one can say this is quantitative research design. See, there is somewhat, sometimes people make mistake saying that quantitative variables and qualitative variables. The quantitative research also includes the quantification of the qualitative variables. Are you able to understand this, what I say? I said the quantitative research design includes the quantification of the variables, relationships, attributes, okay? Whereas the quantitative research also includes, sometimes people, they think that in quantitative research there is no qualitative variable. Qualitative variable has its own, we can say, attributes which are measurable. So quantitative research does not mean that it does not include the qualitative variables. Okay, qualitative variables are also measurable, but only thing is that they have their different, we can say, methods to measure. And again, the measurement is there, but some order is there or something like that. So or male and female are there. Male and female are actually attributes. Though you can compute the male and female in terms of quantity, that how many male population is there, and what is the total population of female, like that. But the quantification is there, but that male and female are attributes. Actually, these are qualities associated with the attributes associated with the variables. So sometimes people make mistake in that. Quantitative research and qualitative research are different. Yeah, they are different. But one should not ignore that quantitative variables as well as qualitative variables are also involved in the quantitative research design and methods. So sometimes people make somewhat, we can say, a rough understanding that quantitative research does not have any qualitative variable in consideration. It is not true. Okay. So when we go through this, if we are assuming that we are somewhere left out, then please let me know. So what we will be considering in this whole of this session, that is types of quantitative research, then measurement fundamentals, then concept and construct validity, then levels of measurement, and research validity. So when we say the quantitative research again can be exploratory. So quantitative research design also can be exploratory, descriptive, causal. See, when we said that quantitative research is a design, okay, then we can have the relationship to explore that whether a particular variable is influencing the other variable. So we can find some insights, some ideas, okay, and we can explore it through the research. Okay, so see, the fundamental research, when we talk about, then largely these are exploratory, because you do some experiments, or sometimes we try to associate the relationship, which has not been done by earlier economists or earlier philosophists or earlier scientists, social scientists, but you explore it. Sometimes we don't gauge them. Sometimes we know that this is happening. So there are many issues which we come across around us, and and there may be somewhat, we can say, very funny relationship, that the speeding up of a vehicle, and if I say that if a partner uh, speeds up the vehicle, And because of that, the divorces are taking place. If I say this type of hypothesis, then this is some kind of exploratory research where you are trying to identify some X variable which influences the Y variable, which may be true, which may not be. And at the end, you may say, no, it is not true. So the exploration is carried in such type of research. But many a times, these are very hypothetical types of exploratory aspects. And in the descriptive, where we have a set of events or some situations, or the circumstances, and we try to figure out some finding out of that, and that is what we know as descriptive research. So is someone willing to ask anything? No. Then third type of quantitative research is causal research, where uh, cause and effect assessments are being carried. So we generally think of this, correct? So the generally we say that if there is a rise in the economic activity, then we say that there is chance of rise in the CO2 emission. So the economic activities, whenever we say, then economic activities generate the CO2 emission. That's what we have somewhat understanding. And with the help of that understanding, we can have some cause and effect relationship. Statistically, we can prove it that because of the rise in the economic activities at a particular location, to say to in a town, and so the CO2 emission in that particular city has gone up. So such type of we can say the assessments of the cause and effect relationships when we carry, then these are known as the causal quantitative research. So these are basically we say the three types of researches which are carried in the quantitative research design. And largely whatever we generally do in the social sciences, it lies in these three categories. uh, then we need to understand, when we have such type of design, then one has to be very careful about defining and understanding the we can say measurement fundamentals. What these measurement fundamentals are, uh, one knows that one can measure the speed, one can measure the distance, one can measure the volume, one can measure the weight, correct? One can measure the size. So these are the standardized measures. Many a times we know that speed is measured in kilometers, distance is measured in sorry, speed is measured in kilometer per hour, then distance is measured in kilometers or meters, then volume is measured in maybe uh, if it is in terms of we say generally in whenever we have the volume, then uh, it depends on what volume we are talking about, whether it's the goods or a particular article, or we are talking about some other aspect, like when we I can say the volume of the share traded in the stock market. So there the different standardized measures are there for that. Then weight we measure maybe sometimes in kg, volume we measure for in terms of liters also many times. So the sizes also are there. So there are some standardized measures uh, for uh, for that matter. And so when we know scientifically, when we can make use of the standardized measures at greater extent, uh, and that they are rightly defined, that the measurement fundamentals, we don't have that much contrary or somewhat confused states. So uh, measurement fundamentals, when we think of, then one should understand the standardized measures first. So if we know that we want to measure the weights of the to say humans, that's if I want to talk about the body mass index, and body mass index of some community, to say at some place in urban areas, I want to talk about the body mass index, when and then accordingly I want to talk about the morbidity. So and I want to say that the body mass index is influencing the morbidity in that particular region. Now, I should know how body mass index is measured and what are the standard or standardized measures for that. So body mass index is computed based with the help of weight and height. Now, if height is known, weight and height known, one can simply measure the body mass index, correct? So for what height, what weight is there? That's the World Health Organization has given its own, we can say, standard measures for the BMI, and then again the classification can be done. The people are overweight, underweight, or normal weight, and so on. So one should understand the standardized measures, and while computing then the weights for male and female, to say one should go for some like in India we make use of the weights in terms of we measure weights in terms of kgs, whereas in UK we have pounds. So so the standardized measures may be different in different countries. Now, one example I have given, but we know that in some of the countries, yards are used for measuring the distance, whereas even the areas. And in India, we make use of the square feet or square meters. So the standardized measures may be different in different countries, but one should understand the very fundamental of the measurement. And if we make some, we can say, mistake in understanding that, then our measurements may go in wrong. So here in social sciences, whenever we make use of the standardized measures, uh, in sciences we know that these are all possible, but in social sciences there are no standardized measures as such. These are developed. Okay, so these particular measures are developed. So one can say in sociology we deal with social classes. Now, can one just tell me what is the standardized norm to define the social class in India? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you
Yes,
are.
sir.
So how social class is measured in India? Is there any standardized measurement of this? See, in India, we know that the social classes are defined by the constitution or the articles in the constitution. Like SC is a social class, ST is a social class, correct? All these we call them categories, correct? And now what we call is the social classes are defined based on their access to the opportunities and all that. So somewhere we know that these social classes, when we have defined in India, these are with the full agreement, not the little agreement, it's a full agreement. And we have the constitutional or arrangements for that, correct? Okay. So there is full agreement on this, that there is a social class which is known as the scheduled caste. There is another class which is social, the scheduled tribes, and we know OBCs are there, and we know the open category social class is there, or general category social class is there. In the states, you have the tribes. That's OBCs are again defined in the denotified tribes as well as uh, nomadic tribes. Correct. Okay. Now, when this full agreement, because of the constitutional arrangement is there, so no one can deny that these are the social classes in our country. But if I say, what are the income classes in our country? What are the income classes in our country? Is there any standardized norm? Hello. Is there any standardized norm? Have we used the words like middle class, lower middle class? Have we used this or not? Hello?
Yes, we are using.
So these are defined, correct? We don't know where these documents are there, but these are defined, correct? Many of you may not have come across the documents in which the middle class is defined, but it is generally used terms, correct? Middle class, generally we say that, and middle class, but we don't know what is middle class many times, because we don't know the classification in real sense. Sometimes it is with the you can say specific definition, sometimes it is not. So generally we say that middle income group is there, lower middle income group is there. Similarly, we say that people are poor in country, so poverty is there in the country. So what does it mean by poverty? Is there any norm for that? Is there a norm for poverty in India?
Yes, per head income of 32 rupees per day.
Okay. So different committees actually define the standard definition of poverty, and this is time to time is revised, correct? So poverty, though, is measured in terms of monthly income or daily income or annual income, But when we say it's a income or the consumption, it's a consumption expenditure also sometimes is used to define the poverty. This is actually, it defines the somewhat rough idea about a person's level of income. Okay, an average what should be the minimum level of income, and if the person is or the family is not able to spend that much or earn that much, that's a threshold, then we call that person is below poverty line. In India we call is BPL, correct? Below poverty line. So that below poverty line is standardized. Okay, so there are some standardized measures. Sometimes they are standardized measures are defined, sometimes they are not. Now if I say Maharashtra is developed state, do you agree? Do you agree with this statement? Maharashtra is developed state.
We can't say developed, this developing.
Oh, you mean to say you can say it's a developing, not developed one.
Developing state.
Okay. So the development is a concept, though there are some parameters which are defined in the development, but still they are not readily measurable. And there is, we can say, little variation in terms of the agreement. Some may say that the state in which, or the region in which the poverty is low, we can say that this is developed, or poverty is minimal. So development is again relative term, how we define it, and that is sometimes we know that uh, there are variables which define the development. It's not one we can say simple word to define and have a standardized norm for the development. Okay, so standardized norm for development cannot be defined, and that is defined by somewhat we can say the ideas which coin the term development. So statistics cannot be used in such problems where the fundamental measurement problem is there. Okay, so though statistics, so we one can go and one can say that we want to have 5 country study and see which country is more developed and which country is less developed. So in that sense, if we want to do such study, then I doubt at what extent this hypothesis, if I define that A country is a developed country, then B, C, D, E, and for which I may make use of the statistics readily with the readily available data and all that, I doubt I am able to do that with the help of statistics. Okay. Uh, so many a times the measurement fundamentals are not understood by the researchers, and then they make the mistakes in coming with the uh, we can say outcomes which are accepted. So what are underlying issues in measurement fundamentals? One has to understand first the concepts. Okay, so first and foremost important thing in measurement fundamentals is to understand the concepts. The different concepts are there, and if the concepts are valid or match as much as possible the real world or not, that must be understood. So when we say concept, is a mental construct that represent a phenomena in the real world. Okay, that is what is concept. Now concept must be as much as clearer and as much as possible the real. one in the real world. And so many a times that what happens is that we do not we can say readily try to conceptualize the things. Like if I say, if I want to measure the growth in development, okay, growth in education, sorry. If I want to understand the growth in education in to say 2 3 states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Kerala, okay. Now, how you will define it and how you will do it? Tell me. Growth of education. Hello. Hello. Can we analyze the relative growth of education in these 3 states? What do you mean by education here? How we define the concept of education? Okay, let it be. If I want to evaluate
So
the
Kerala,
health or the status of health, okay, in these 3 states, how I should define it? What is health? How I define the health here?
so Kerala is a highly literate state, no? So education, I think it is little higher.
So you mean to say that education can be defined by the literacy?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
So a state which is more literate, you mean to say that the state is having a very good growth of education? Hello? Do you think that literacy is sufficient to define the education? Or do you also want to analyze the average years of schooling of the population? Is is a proper way of defining the education? Or you say that the number of educational institutions? Or you want to talk about Gross enrollment ratio is a proper way of defining the education. Tell me now, you see this is how the problems we are able to see in defining one concept. We know that literacy has its own relevance, correct? Average years of schooling has its own relevance in education. Number of educational institutions also is equally important component in education. Gross enrollment ratio is also important component. Now, how we define then education? Can we define the education? We are talking about in the measurement fundamentals, okay? Not the education. Education is somewhat, we can say, the qualitative change in the individual. A person who is educated, we say that the person has somewhat more understanding, has learned as many as things. We say is an educated person. So these are the measurement fundamentals. See, these are the problems in understanding the concepts. Many a times we do it, and we then misinterpret the you can say the outcomes based on some understanding what we built upon. So what is important here is to understand the measurement fundamental, that when we conceptualize the thing, then it should be as much as possible the real world concept. Okay, it should be valid one. Okay, and in social sciences, this is a problem. The reason is that the broader concepts are there, like health is a broader concept. Now, how you define it's a better a state with the better health, if I want to say, which state is better in terms of health? If I want to say Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Kerala, I have 3 states, and I want to say that in some state health is better, and in some states health is poor. What way I should be able to say my statement and measure it? Tell me.
So here also we determine the various factors about the health, no?
Correct. What factors?
It can be food, uh, it can be their living conditions, it can be population.
See, there are some generalized definitions about health, and health is defined by like in HDI. How many of you have gone through HDI measurement, Human Development Index? Human Development Index. In human development, the standard of living is one, the second is education, and third is health, correct? So what is there in the health? How it is measured? Can we say the life expectancy is one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So life expectancy is one variable which can define the health if it is for the macro level. Sometimes at local level, and for we can say at a temporal level, the morbidity is another measurement. Okay. But if we want to have somewhat, we can say, thorough measurement of health, then one can go for the infant mortality rate, then maternal mortality rate, then child mortality rate, then birth rate, death rate, and all together, then one can define the health in proper way, correct? Okay. So a state where the life expectancy is high, maternal mortality rate is low, infant mortality rate is low, child mortality rate is low, the death rate is low, the morbidity is low, then one can say that the state is more healthy compared to the other states. Can we say that? Now, all this is outcome. Okay, all these are outcomes of the, we can say, nutrition as well as the all inputs given to the health. Correct. So the healthcare is there, then nutrition is there. All these are inputs, and these inputs make these outcomes to be good or bad. Correct. Are you able to understand what I am talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So where one has to define the concepts, and the concepts are nothing, they are a mental construct that represent phenomena in the real world. So it is not necessarily health is a word, health is a term which constitutes many factors which contribute in health. At macro level, when we talk about, on an individual level, when we talk about health, then we define it differently. Okay, is that clear? So this is a big challenge to transform concepts into concrete terms. So when we have concept, some concept is there with us, we want to transform that concept into concrete terms. If we are not able to do that, that's what we have done here. We wanted to understand the education as a concept or the level of education, but then we had to define it with the help of some variables, some factors, and that is what we have concretized it. Okay, so the terms are that the concepts are to be concretized with the help of some factors, and many a times when we say concretize in terms these concepts, then these are measurable. Okay, so Pollock has given this model. That's concept, conceptualized definition, then operational definition, and then the factors or the variables which conceptualize the concept. Okay, so and that variable may be an attribute, or it takes some value. Okay, so the variable may be associated with some attributes, or it takes some value in that variable, and then accordingly you can just define the concept. So having this in mind, that we need to measure the factors or the variables to define some concept, to concretize the terms, we need to understand few of the units. Okay, what units are there? In social sciences, we deal with individuals. We come across people. We talk about places. We compare the groups. We also have the relation of the institutions, their impact on the other variables and all that. We compare nation to nation, we compare the programs and evaluate them, and we see that the programs have influenced the what we can say is the objectives set through the public policies and all that. So what do we mean by these all units? Units are somewhat, we can say, the factors through which we try to measure either the or understand either the attributes associated to these units, or we try to get some numerical values of these factors and try to then bring out some information from that, and we want to make this particular information generalized, so that one should accept that this is scientific, we can say, outcome. Now here, the individuals, they have characteristics, individuals, they have attributes, like uh, individuals, when we say the people around us, and then we try to talk about, for example, if we want to study the travel behavior of the younger population. So travel behavior one has to understand. Then what you will understand and what you will study, it is the study of the individual's behavior relating to travel. Okay. Now, when we say individuals, then we define these individuals and we say that these individuals are younger individuals. So younger population. Then again, then we try to look at then what places we are looking at, whether it's a rural population or rural individuals or the urban individuals, or whether we are talking about the groups in terms of male individuals or female individuals. So there are attributes of the individuals. So we classify the individuals based on their attributes and people. Then we talk about the places. Then we know that it has their own spatial dimensions and all that. One cannot readily just compare people in MMR or the behavior of people in MMR and the behavior in some rural area, and one can say that there is significant difference between the behavior of the people. It is bound to happen because of the place. It has its own significance, it has its own attribute. So whenever we compare, then we say whether the comparability is there or not and all that. So all these are precautions when we take the quantitative research design. We have to understand these units first, that what we are talking about, whether we are talking about individuals, whether we are talking about people, whether we are talking about places, whether we are talking about groups. So one can apply some behavioral trait to some group of people, but that may not be applicable to the other group of people. Like one in psychology, we say that people are mature. What if I want to say that people are mature, then can I apply to any age group of people? No. The reasons are there that the maturity definition has to be defined very properly, that what we are talking about. So again, the measurements problem is there. So though all of you may be saying, sir, कि ये बहुत detail हो रहा है, ये बहुत detail हो रहा है. Yes, I understand that these reasons are there. We do not care about all this. That's what we understood. We do not care many a times what we are doing. We want to do it. We are highly motivated and all that. Okay. But it's very important that though whether we are motivated to do some research, but whether we have understood the the fundamentals of the quantitative research or not, fundamentals of measurement. And today only I just tell you, because my examples are somewhat, we can say, very practical one, in a sense that whatever I observe, I take that for understanding better. Let me just give you one example. Yesterday, one student had presented some MA dissertation on health expenditure in India and UK, and that was OP, out-of-pocket expenditures in UK, and that was a household health expenditure. Making use of some data from UK and India, I tried to do some study and taken some data from even World Health Organization. But very important question, it remain in my mind, whether UK and India, in terms of health, comparable. What do you think? What do you think? What could be the rationale if we want to measure or evaluate the healthcare or health expenditure in UK and India? Can we find some rationale for such a study? Hello? Do you find some rationale? Around 28 people are there in the class right now. Do you find any rationale to evaluate the health expenditure in India and UK?
Yes, sir. If we want to achieve the health standard or health services in UK, then how much per head we should spend, or what percentage of GDP the health expenditure should be. On that basis, the comparison should be done, and accordingly, we should try to spend that much amount.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Hello?
Sir, please repeat the question.
I said, with such a study, if I say, should be carried to evaluate the health expenditure in UK and India, can this study is rational?
Yes, sir, it's rational, I think.
Okay. Don't you think that whenever we compare, now we are comparing two nations, correct? So when we are comparing two nations, there should be some rationale. So one has to understand the characteristics of these two nations, at least as far as the health is concerned. What healthcare system is in India? What healthcare system is in UK? If we don't understand and we try to just analyze the household healthcare expenditure, okay, household expenditure, we are talking about household health expenditure. Do you think that this would be better to do this?
Yes, sir. This
Or-
study will be helpful to know analyze about or compare about the conditions.
Okay. See, these two countries, they have different healthcare systems. UK and US, UK and in India. Okay. If we understand the healthcare systems first, and we think that they are comparable in nature. Okay. If universal health system is applied in UK, whereas in India we don't have universal healthcare system. Okay. As well, in some of the developed countries, the mandatory health insurance is there. In India, mandatory health insurance is not there. Okay. Are you getting what I mean to say? So what should be the rationale? What could be the rationale? One can do study. Doing study is not a problem. But if we are having some comparability, then I think that would be more appropriate to have such a study. Correct? Okay.
Yes, sir. Comparison should be done between two similar or comparable things. Otherwise, it will.
Or extreme, thing. That also can be understood. For example, if I say we want to understand the poverty in best top 5 nations, 5 states in the country, and bottom 5 states in the country in terms of per capita income. Can we do such a study?
Sorry, sir. Please repeat the question.
I said we want to analyze the poverty in top 5 states in the country and bottom 5 states in the country in terms of per capita income.
Yes, sir, that we can do because the measurement of poverty is same all over India. It's being defined by the government of India.
Yeah. So the comparability is there. Okay. Because by constitution they are states, and when we say top 5, then they are closer. Okay, in terms of the development aspects. So in terms of per capita income, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the access to education, in terms of access to the other important aspects which influence the poverty and all that. Okay. So when we talk about top 5, then they are closer in terms of the inputs as well as output. And when we talk about the bottom 5, then they are also close to their inputs as well as output. Okay. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So see, whenever we have units of analysis, then they must be comparable. That's what is one of the important aspect of the quantitative research design. Then many a times the students, they just give the objectives, and then they come to know that अरे ये तो हो ही नहीं पा रहा है. उसका रीजन ये है कि we did not understand the attributes, the classes, the characteristics of the units. If we do not, then there is a problem. Okay. Is that clear? So we need to understand the units properly, units of analysis. If we understand the units of analysis properly, I think our half of the work is done, and then only one can go for such a study. Okay. Now, if one says that I want to study the renewable energy in 2 villages, X village and Y village. These are 2 villages in some district, to say Sangli district. Okay. and I want to analyze or I want to study the renewable energy development in these two villages. Is it possible to do it? First of all, we should know how much renewable energy is produced in Sangli district, correct? If it has a very, very large share, and then if the rural and urban mix is there, then rural we can take. Otherwise, if there is no as such, we can say growth in the renewable energy in Sangli, in rural areas, then one cannot go for such a study. So units of analysis one has to understand properly. Okay? Is that clear? And all these problems, if we have sorted out while defining the research objectives, that would help us. Actually, the problem what starts with our objectives itself. We define the objectives of our studies without understanding many times the variables, the attributes related, and the units of analysis. These are the fundamental errors which we make in in the uh, in the quantitative research. Okay. Let's take one case of development. We know that Todoro has defined development as development is both a physical reality and a state of mind in which society has, through some combination of social, economic, and institutional processes, secured the means of obtaining a better life. Development in all societies must have at least the following three objectives. One, to increase the availability and widen the distribution of basic life sustaining goods, to raise levels of living, and third is to expand the range of economic and social choices. Now, this development concept has many aspects. It's obtaining a better life. It is development in all societies. Okay. So it is through the combination of social, economic, and institutional processes one has to attain a better life. Now, when we say better life, whether that better life is measurable. Okay. So the development is a concept which is not readily measurable. Development is a process. Okay. And there is no scale or a gauge in any of the or which has been given by any of the international or so-called organizations which look after the development as one of the objectives for the globe. Okay. So we don't have readily available gauge to measure the development, but we say that the betterment is important and betterment be achieved in terms of the all aspects of life. And so this concept itself gives us the mix of ideas. So the measurement, if we want to measure the development, then we have to just go through all the factors which influence or which determine the development. And that's what when when I interact with the people in 2014, we voted for development, correct? But even you just do this activity in your class. If you are teachers, ask your students, what do you mean by development? Ask yourself, what do you mean by development? Those who are non-economic students, ask yourself, what is development? And then you will come to know you are not able to define development properly. If we at a level where our education level is very, very high, we have masters, we have doctorates and all that, and if we are able to define development at some extent and not fully, then what about common man in the country? Okay, whether they are able to understand the development as a concept, and whether they are able to gauge it, how much of the development taken place since 2014 and how much it is not, whether they are able to do it. So this type of we can say concepts are very catchy and all that, but if you go into the details, then you will come to know that these are not that readily measurable, they readily gaugeable definitions. So one has to be very cautious about the quantitative measures or quantitative methods, in which when we have to follow the research methodology, one should be able to define the concept, conceptualize it, like we have defined the health. We wanted to understand health, but then we conceptualize. Okay, it is not one what we do it. It's generally what happens is that many a times we have readily available concepts and conceptualizations. So the operation variables are also defined many a times. Like what we know, the human development. If I want to define the human development, how we define human development? How we define human development?
So through HDI index.
Yeah, correct, Dr. Harsh. Through HDI, because this is a HDI which is widely accepted norm through which we can compare with the others. Okay, but can someone say that I have adequate human development in my country? What is the adequacy then? Can you just define that threshold, that we have sufficient level of human development? That's sufficient, whether that is measurable.
Hello.
Yeah.
So that we have the HDI index and the three measures through which we measure the HDI index, and we know that's very low
Correct, that is
compared to
correct.
other countries. So it's
But
measured.
when we have, for example, some HDI index, okay, some HDI index, some value to say n is some value of HDI index, but that's the n what we have achieved, whether that is sufficient. Can I know that sufficiency?
Definitely not. It is just a measure, but we cannot say that we have achieved full-fledged development if our
Yeah.
HDI value is high.
Correct, Dr. Harsh. Because sufficiency is a relative term. For one individual, if we 10 people are there, and if we ask 10 people the same IDI, whether it's sufficient, this few may say, yeah, it is sufficient. Some may say, no, further improvement is required. Some may say, I'm okay with both, whether we achieve higher grades, higher HDI, or we are at this only. I don't have any problem. So it is a relative term. So sufficiency, again, when we say the measurement, we can't have some readily gaugeable definition. So these are the limitations of what we can say, the broader concepts of some of the aspects we deal with. There are many. It is not simply one or two. There are many such obstacles they do come, and so we try to get as real as, okay, as real as. So our attempt is not to get the accuracy, but we want to converge to the as much as real as possible. Okay, is that clear? And so when we make use of the concept, for example, this target development is there. This is a concept. How we achieve, we may have some classification that standard of living is one of the important component, and that is influenced by GDP per capita. So development has one dimension that when you have higher GDP per capita, then you can say that you have somewhat better developed scenario. And that's what one of the okay, say uh, uh, definition which is adopted by World Development Indicators and World Bank, and they say that uh, the the countries can be classified in terms of the developed one, then developing one, then less developed and least developed. Okay, so if we can define this way, but for that they have given some threshold GDP per capita. So GDP per capita is one measure which is used by World Bank to define the development of a country. Okay, now this is, we can say, generalized form of the concept of development. When we say it's a developed country or developed, underdeveloped, or developing, or less developed, or least developed.
नाही तर त्याला उद्या घेऊ. पुढचा वाला क्वेश्चन काय होता?
Hello.
एकदा साहेब महत्वाचा नीट प्रॉपर्ली कर. Using the rules of negation, write the negation of the following. ठीक आहे, लिहून टाक. घ्या आता पहिला क्वेश्चन घ्या. P implies R and Q.
Hello.
Hello.
तर त्यासारखाच आहे, काय अवघड नाही. Same question. P implies R and
Hello, Tushar sir.
ओके.
Hello.
त्याचं निगेशन करा. काय करा?
येस शुक्ला सर, एक मिनिट हा.
निगेशन ऑफ. कशाचं निगेशन करा म्हणजे P implies R and
सूर्यवंशी. येस येस
काय करा?
शुक्ला.
निगेशन.
Yes, yes.
Shall I continue? Okay. Then the other dimension can be income distribution. The third dimension is the quality of the public institutions, and fourth dimension is civil liberties. Now, these can be mix of the components which we define the concept as a development. So World Bank development concept is somewhat different. Then here the concept which is defined by some economists like Todero is somewhat different. So the concept, how it is defined with some, we can say, operational variables like income distribution can be defined, GDP per capita defined, then civil liberties can be defined, then quality of public institutions can be defined. So the operationalization of the variables and construct validity, these four components, if we are able to follow, then we are able to even do some better quantitative research with the help of quantitative research design. Else we may do it, but then the limitations will come. And lastly, what is then construct validity? Construct validity is match between the land of theory and the land of observation. Now, what is this? See, whenever we do anything, then we say that whether theory supports or not. Okay. We say that in economics that if there is a fall in price, okay, then there is a rise in demand. Okay, so we say this this is the law of demand. Other things being equal, only price changes, and if the price falls, then demand rises. Now, if we want to do such a study, whether the law of demand applies to some X commodity or not, or X service or not, we want to do that. So we want to have some land of observations that this happens or not. I want to see, and then we have some land of theory, that is the law of demand. Now, many times what happens is that this construct validity is not being taken care of. Many times it happens. Have you observed that? Can I say the consumption of vada pav in Mumbai and the grades of the college students, there is high correlation between these two. If I say something like that, consumption of vada pav in Mumbai and grades of the college students attain. If I want to say there is high correlation between these two.
So it does not make any sense.
Does not make any sense, correct. So sometimes we need to understand the land of theory and land of observation. The observation can be both. That's you find that there is increasing consumption of vada pav. There is one observation, and there is another observation that the grades of the college students in recent years have gone up. Okay. Now, whether these have gone up because of the consumption of vada pav, can we associate such a relationship? We can't, because there is no theoretical premise for that. There is no rationale. Okay. Correct. But can we say that the grades of the college students are improving because of the information technology, the information sources available, rise in the availability and access to the information technology? Do you think that this can be one good reason for improvement in the grades of the college students? Can this be?
Yes, this can be studied.
Yeah. So the land of theory and land of observation, there should be match between these two, and that is known as construct validity. Okay. So this is the construct validity is nothing but how effectively do the variables we use represent the mental image of the concept, and it's a manifestation in the real world. Okay. This is the fundamental question of the construct validity. Many times, see, let me just give you one example. Yes, today only one student presented a dissertation on the import reliability. Or import intensity, you may say one import intensity, you can say it is import intensity. Import intensity is nothing but the import value of import to the total value of the output produced by the firms. Okay, output in terms of gross value added. So imports divided by gross value added is the import intensity. What does it indicate? It indicates the dependence on the imports. Correct? Correct or not? Now, very premise the student was arguing was that the import dependency or the import intensity is rising, which is not good. This is the argument which was presented. Those who are from economics, can you tell me that the import dependency is rising is a bad or good thing?
Sir, it depends on how we measuring our export. If the import intensity is increasing and simultaneously export intensity is also increasing, then there is no harm. But if we are not comparing with export and we are just comparing import, then that's a serious threat for any country, because it's all of we will end up in the balance of payment issue.
Okay. One argument is correct here, but at the same time, then shall we rethink of the globalization? The very premise of the globalization is that it is depending upon the cost advantage theory, correct? Comparative cost advantage theory by Ricardo, which says that whatever cheap is available from wherever in the world, you import that, and wherever you can export, okay, you export it, correct? So if our imports are rising, it doesn't mean that this is a concern. So one can say that one can argue that import substitution is one way of looking at that. But import substitution and competitiveness is very important thing, whether we are able to be competitive one, so that we are able to reduce the imports, whether we are compatible enough and the resources are available within the country to produce the imported goods. So if we are not able to do that, then we need not to concern about the increasing import intensity. Okay, so there are dimensions. One has to understand the core of the issue, and then the arguments be dealt with. But many a times we do not try to have the land of theory and land of observation match, and then our problem starts with. Okay, so this is very important thing. Any type of research, this is very important, whether it is quantitative, qualitative, or any type of research is there. The construct of validity is one of the important components in the research. Okay, is that clear? And then the measurement. Now we have come up at somewhat very important thing, that this is what we do actually. So y is function of x. We know that x is depending y, x is influencing y. So y is depending upon x. That's what we say. Now, when we say y is getting influenced by x, so the y is dependent and x is independent, correct? So the variation in x generates the variation in, or evaluates the variation in dependent variable y. Then if our study allows us to do this, then there is, we can say, we can go for scientific testing. But if it does not allow us to do this, then we can't go for scientific testing. So measurement allows you not only to establish the relationship between these two, that is dependent variable and independent variable, but also allows you to go for scientific testing. Okay, and that is what measurement is. Measurement is not simply just allowing some relationship or something like that. And if that does not allow you scientific testing, then there is a problem. Okay, so and if our studies do not allow us to measure variation in dependent variable as related to variation in X variable, then we cannot do any scientific testing. We measure whether certain variable are meaningful, individually significant. Okay, and we measure the variation in our variables. Then we also measure the significance and explanatory power of our models and our relationship between variables. So it is very important that our studies must allow us to measure the variation in dependent variable as related to the variation in our X variable, where we can go for the scientific testing as well, where we will be able to measure whether the certain variables are meaningful or not, whether we measure the variation in our variables or not, and we also measure the significance and explanatory power of the models that can we rely on the relationship between the variables. And then if it can be quantified, then you should do so. So all these are important things in the measurement. So these four aspects, if we are able to do with these relationships, then these measurements are fruitful. Else, these measurements are not fruitful and useful. And so in the quantitative research design, if we are able to get such a measurement from the exploration what we do, then it helps us in bringing some, what we can say, the empirical evidence for the theoretical premise. And that is what our objective is in our researches. Okay, so now we are talking about the attributes of the variables. That is, one is qualities of the variables. Now, the qualities of the variables are defined by the two aspects. One is exhaustive.
May I discuss you, sir?
Yeah, Tushar.
Sir, before proceeding to the new topic, we can have a break of half an hour.
Shall I continue this for 5 minutes and then we will have a break?
No problem, sir.
Let me just check how much we have. Important things only I will cover now. Okay, and then we will go for a break. Okay, so the qualities of the variables, where the variables are exhaustive in nature, as well as sometimes the variables are mutually exclusive. So when we talk about the levels of education, that's a schooling, then one can say that there is no schooling, or there the people with the elementary education are there. The people are from the secondary level education or higher secondary level education or graduate level, postgraduate level, and all that. So one can have the all possible answers for the question. If I ask what is your level of education, then I will get certain answer which is exhaustive in nature, because we can define that particular level of education, like I did not go to the school, or I have primary level of education, or secondary level of education, or higher secondary, or graduate, or postgraduate, or I may ask for the vocational education or for technical education, something like that. But this is exhaustive in nature. So when we have variables, the qualities of the variables sometimes are exhaustive, sometimes are mutually exclusive. Okay. So if I ask a person whether you are married or unmarried, then it's a mutually exclusive. One person is married, cannot be unmarried, na? Okay, or both is possible. in our society like India, it's not allowed legally also. A person is married. Your status is married. You can't have both these status, married and unmarried. Am I correct? Correct or not?
Yes, sir.
So it's a mutually exclusive. Okay. So the qualities of variables, they have some definitions, like variables have attributes, then development is a concept, but which we can have somewhat, we can say, relative measurement of development as developed or developing or less developed, less developing, least developed, and so on. So the definitions, they do matter whenever we construct any concept. Then how do we construct the variables? One has to be very uh, uh, we can say uh, very careful enough while defining the concepts, whether the concepts which are conceptualized are operationalized or not. If the concepts are there, but they are not able to be operationalized, then the measurements cannot be carried, because operationalization is important for any measurability. Okay, so one has to be very careful enough whenever we construct any variable. We should be able to define uh, the operationalization also, and one should know that. For example, if I define the development, so low, medium, and high. Now, development is variable. Attributes are low, medium, and high, and values assigned are 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the operationality of any variable is very important, that whether you are able to define the relationship, whether we are able to assign the values to the attributes, or the attributes also are able to be defined for the variable. If all these four are possible, then we can say that the operationality is there. Okay, they are operationable. And if they are not, then the problem is there. Okay, and so levels of measurement requires the operationality, and operationality requires all these, that is attributes, values, relationship, variable. So many times if we are missing something, then the problem is there. So levels of measurement, we can measure it nominally, we can have the ordinal measurements, we can have interval measurements, and we can have ratio measurements. Now, when we say the measurements, if we define as a nominal, then the problem is the nominal attributes, or the nominal measurements, or the values of values like 33 number is given on a jersey. What way you can relate that jersey number on jersey? Can it has great relevance in the performance of the player? Do you think that the number on the jersey influences the performance of the player? We do not see any such relationship, correct? Or do we?
It's a superstition, sir. Directly we can say that.
Many times the nominal measurements, whenever we do, these are merely figures or the numbers, and unless we associate some important meaning to that number, unless we do that, we attribute that, unless we do with such nominal measurement, that these nominal measurements, they don't have that great relevance in the research. But very importantly, when the numbers are there, but we want to define the relationship between the numbers. Like I have numbers on FDI, I have numbers on GDP, and I want to say that GDP is a function of FDI, that FDI influences GDP. But I don't have merely two numbers. I have, for example, 20-year data on GDP, 20-year data on FDI, and I want to say that, and theoretical underpinning by even Keynesian framework is that Y equals to C plus I, and I is investment. So whether it's a domestic investment or foreign investment, the investment is investment. So Y depends on the C and I, and if I say Y is functional because consumption remains constant and only FDI is changing, then I can find out the impact of FDI on the GDP. And so the theoretical premise allows me to do that along with the other, there can be other factors also. So one can go for such a we can say measurement, but all these numbers can be nominal as well, because there is a nominal GDP you can take. Nominal GDP, if you take and nominal values of FDI, if you take and you run the regression and you are done with the estimation. But again, the limitations can be there on that particular estimation depending upon whether the all the diagnosis is carried for such a regression or not. So nominal variables, when we measure, then these variables consist of categories that are non-ordered. Okay, so if I say whether the MLA voted for the change in the act or not, now it's a yes or no. It is some binary variable, categorical variable, a simple categorical variable is there. Okay, so the nominal, when I say whether it's an event occurs or not, that can be known with the help of nominal one. So these variables consist of categories that are non-ordered. There can be race, there can be ethnicity, there can be some event which has occurred, which has not occurred. And these are not generally in the statistics as well as in econometrics. This type of variables are known as dummy variables. So if I want to say that the seasonality I want to observe, then I can define the quarters, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, for few years, and then one can just go for example, if you have 20-year data quarterly, so you have 20 into 4, the 80 observations are there. And if you want to find then seasonality in the particular variable, you can find it. So the seasonality with the help of quarters you can find, and then you can say quarter 1, quarter 2, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, all these Q1, Q2, Q3, 4 are dummy variables because they define some season. Okay, some season that this the seasonality attribute is assigned to that quarter. So one has to understand all such we can say dummy variables like male, female. You can just assign 0 for male, 1 for female, and then one can go for some exploration that whether the male population likes pink color of clothes, or female population likes the pink one. So one can go for that also. So the dummy variables can be used, and then you can define the relationships and measurements can be done. So when we use the dependent variable as the dummy variable, outcome of some phenomenon is either also possible that present or not, that also can be there. So this whole of these type of researches are carried with the help of binary type of research, where the measurements are there, but they assign some nominal values. Then we have ordinal values. Ordinal values and ordinal variables, like we have like here income tax brackets, then social classes, levels of education. These are ordinal. But can someone say that I am twice educated than the other one? Can someone say I am doctorate, so I am twice educated than a master's? Can someone say that? Hello. Hello. Can we say that I am PhD and someone is master's? Can I say that I'm twice educated because I'm PhD? Okay. Can we say no or yes?
I don't think so, sir. It's a big C, but we
You
can't.
cannot measure. You cannot measure this, correct? Correct. You can
Yes.
order. You can give the
Or measurement is not possible.
yeah, measurement. Absolute measurement is not possible. Okay. So can you measure that from some middle income to higher income? Can you measure some distance in terms of income that I want to define it in middle income and higher income? So these are groups, correct? So how these groups are defined then? Are there some specified, like in income tax brackets are there? We know that up to 5 lakhs rupees, zero tax rate is there. And 5 lakhs to 7.5 to say 5% rate of tax is there. And 10 lakhs onwards, it's a 10%, 10 lakhs to or 7.5 to 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, it is 10%, and 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs to say 20%, and 20 lakhs onwards 30%. So the tax rates are given. Okay, so these are the tax brackets. Are there any relationship in the can I say that uh, the person who has the 20 lakhs income pays 30% tax is somewhat, we can say 30% more than this person who is having income of 5 lakhs. Okay, but can this be distance which can be measured that readily, that I have 15 lakhs more income and so I'm paying 30% of the tax? Okay, so these problems are there in terms of the measurement. And so ordinal measurement, when we have, when one can say this is one level of income, this is the second level of income, third level of income, fourth level of income, and this can be changed by the government anytime whenever government wants to. And there may be some theoretical premise for that, but not that the exact distance is there. So 1 to 2, whether you have some distance which you can measure, and you can say that 2 to 3 is the same distance as 1 to 2, and 3 to 4 distance is the same distance what we have 1 to 2. We don't have such thing, correct? Correct. Similarly for the level of education and so on. So these are the ordinal in nature. Ordinal measurements then is for the attributes which can be ranked in order. Like here we have high school, less than high school, then some high school level, then high school to degree, some college, college degree, then post college. That's all. These are in India. What we do is the primary or no education, primary, then secondary education, then higher secondary education, then we say it's a graduate and postgraduate, and so on. So such classes can be there. So educational attainments can be defined differently. Okay, but can I define that this is the distance between these two is similar to that of this distance and similar to that of this distance and this distance? Can you say that? No. Okay, we can't do this because this is ordinal measurement. Okay, in ordinal measurement, one cannot measure the distance from one to the other classes. Okay. Okay. And the lastly is the interval. Sorry, second last is interval. And interval again has to say if I have 40°C temperature and I have 80°C temperature, can I say that the 80°C temperature is twice the temperature than that of 40°? Can you say that?
Yes, sir.
I am not from physics, but I think it is not. Okay. I think it is not. It is not twice the temperature. 40° to 80° is not twice, because 40° is related to 0°. And 0°, when we say, what is this 0°? That is defined on the scale, correct? A point on .0°. Okay. So it is a sense that provide a scale. It is a sense that provide a scale. So distance is measured between points on a scale with even units. So the distance between attributes has meaning. For example, temperature from 30 to 40 is same as 70 to 80. Can this distance be same? 30 to 40 distance here and 70 to 80 distance. This is 10 distance, na? But can this 10 distance be same? Can you say that? Okay, it is not. So the distance is same, but the measurement which we actually interval estimation or interval measurements are done, then it's not that easy that one can just do that. So ratios don't make any sense here. At 80° is not twice as hot as 40°, although the attribute values are. So the values they are, but not the in actual sense. Okay. You will not be able to touch 80°. You can touch 40°. You can't even sense it. It's not twice. Okay. And lastly, the ratios. So similar to the interval level variables, how we measure the distance between 2 points, but can do so in absolute terms here in ratio. Ratio measures have a true zero, unlike interval measures. What is meant by the true zero? True zero is that ratio can be zero. Okay. Ratio can be zero. So true zero is possible as far as the ratio is concerned. But for interval, can the interval be zero from x to y? The interval has to be positive, na? So interval has to be positive. It can't be zero. It can't be equal to zero. Okay. But here ratio can be zero. So one can say that someone is twice as rich as someone else based on the value of their assets, since to have no money is based on a starting point of zero. So you can have a person with zero income, and then you can measure it from there, and you can say that I have twice income than someone else. So when you say I have 12,000 or 12 lakhs, for example, 12 lakhs income, and someone has 6 lakhs income. So for you, this to this becomes twice. Okay. And for the person, it can say that I have half income. So these are the measurement issues which are to be understood while going for any research. So ratios are far better in terms of ratio measurements. The It has an obsolete zero, which is meaningful. Then you can construct a meaningful ratio as a fraction, and which is very important thing. Then it is meaningful to say that we have twice as many as clients in this period as we did in the previous 6 months. So you have the ratio, you can have some meaningful statements based on the ratios, like there is rise in 20% of the literacy rate. There, that 20% has some great meaning. Instead of saying that we have added 2 lakh population in literacy, if you say that we have added 20% population in literacy, so that gives you some, what we can say, realistic measurement, which is meaningful. And so when we have measurements, then ratios are very, very strong. And that is why we, many a times we say that make the use of relative measures than that of the absolute measures. Okay. So relative measures like ratios, percentage, then these are very meaningful compared to, and that's what we say that we don't want to talk about, for example, if I want to say the exports, don't talk about exports. You talk about exports to GDP. This is ratio. Okay, if you are comparing 10 countries and exports of the countries, don't compare the exports simply, just exports to GDP ratios of these 10 countries, and then you will come to know that which country is having more export orientation and all that. That gives you a better picture than the absolute exports, because absolute exports may mislead your findings. So many times whenever we carry the research, we rely more on the ratios, and they are strongest you can say measurements in the scientific research, whereas the interval and ordinal and nominal, they are somewhat weaker forms of the measurements. So here we will stop, because when we have all these, then there is we can say validity component that I will not go into the details, because these are all related to the measurement that the construct already we have explained, that the concept construct is there, and internal validity, external validity, and statistical validity. All these four also equally important components in the quantitative research design. When we have any research, then the components which we are making use of, the factors or the variables which we are making use of, the relationships which we are making use of, they should have the validity. There are sometimes internal validities, there are sometimes external validities, and there are sometimes statistical validities. And all these four validities, they help your quantitative research to be more scientific. And if we miss any of this, that there is no validity at all in our quantitative measurements, the quantitative research which you have carried has a severe problem then. So here I stop with this for the first session, and we'll continue with some techniques which we follow in the quantitative methods. These all were very, I wanted to just talk about all this. The reasons were there, because we come across many proposals, we come across many researchers, and we find that arbitrarily something is carried, and there are no theoretical premises, there are no theoretical discussions, and just they have done it, and there is no care taken to have the measurements carried in the researchers. And so I thought that this is important for quantitative researchers, whichever people are carrying any quantitative research, please be very careful about measurement component of the variables and the concepts we are defining. I end up discussion here. We will take a break of maybe 10-15 minutes. Is it okay?
20 minutes will do, sir.
I don't have any problem. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So participant, we will meet after maybe 20 minutes of short break. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, many times what happens is then research, we come across, am I audible?
Sir, you are audible, but screen is not it's not showing any text.
Is it not? I have shared this screen now. Screen is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes.
One whiteboard is there.
Whiteboard.
Okay. So whenever we carry any research, we just carry some computations like mean, then standard deviation, then correlation, then regression. Correct? So whenever we do all these calculations in quantitative research design, all this is part of the statistics. In econometrics, we have econometrics. Okay. A slight difference between these two, not much, because both now at a level where we do our PhDs and all that. For that, whatever we carry the statistics is up to level. So it is not basic statistics. Okay, it is at a very high level. We measure all these, or we make use of all these tools to infer some information from the computations and all that, and so they have a great meaning for us whenever we carry higher level research and all that. But do we really care about what does they stand for in terms of meaning, or why we make use of mean? Those who have done basic statistics, econometrics, they know that why we make use of mean, standard deviation, or correlation, or regression, and all that. But whenever we do all this in the quantitative research design, very premise of this quantitative research design is that when we deal with the data, this data, it has distribution. What is the distribution? Anyone can tell me? What is distribution? Data is distributed. Data is distributed. What is meaning of that? Now, if I say I have a question asked to the households to say how you perceive the air pollution, and if I have asked this question to 800 households, okay, and when I ask how you perceive the air pollution in your region, 800 households, they gave the answer, but the answer were limited, and that was very high, moderate, low, very low. So this is what I wanted to just have a scale of the air pollution. Okay. Now the scale of air pollution, it says that it varies from very high to very low. Now one can see this is a problem that I wanted to see how air pollution is being observed by the households in the region. And if such a question is asked, now you tell me what statistics you will use to give more appropriate inference for such a question. Tell me. And for that matter, if I get the responses like 410 said very high, and 90 said very high, and moderate there were around 150, and low were to say 100 and sorry, it's 506. Yeah. Yeah. So if this is the data which I got from the question, now you tell me how I should draw the inference from. What should be your null hypothesis? Or should you frame the hypothesis for this or not? And what it could be? See, this is the problem when we have the actual practical problems, we don't know how the statistics to be used, and we randomly do the things and we follow what the others have done. Correct? So null hypothesis could be that the responses are distributed equally. The technical hypothesis could be this one, correct? Or not? Okay. What does it mean? There are 5 responses. 800 households are there. So 800 households must be distributed equally for each of the response. That is the null hypothesis. Are you getting what I am talking about? Ideally, if the hypothesis is to be true, then 160 responses for high, very high, high, 160 responses for moderate, 160 responses for low, and 160 responses for very low must have received if we want to say that the all responses are equally revealed by the households. And if this is the null hypothesis, then this null hypothesis must be rejected if we want to say that the most of the households, they revealed that there is high air pollution, because high air pollution revealed by 410 households, correct? Correct or not? Hello, are you following me? What I am trying to deal with? Hello. There are some people from education I could see, and there are some people from management also. Am I correct? See, these are the responses which are ordinal. Order is there, high, very high to very low. Correct? So this is ordinal data. So data which is available is for 800 households on one question that 90 people have said that there is high pollution, very high pollution. 410 said that there is high air pollution, and 150 said there is moderate air pollution. Now this data is available. What to do with this data? Shall we just graph and say that 90 said very high, and 410 said high, 150 said moderate, 110 said low, and 40 said very low. Shall we just graph and just say this? Shall we do this? What do you say? Tell me. There are around 27 participants, and none of the participants is responding to the question. Hello.
Participants, please try to answer the questions. Let the session be interactive.
Tell me what to be done, whether a simple graph is okay, and you're okay with this graph, and you say that, sir, analysis or inference based on this graph should be acceptable or accepted, and this would be scientific one.
Sir, I don't feel so. It is absolutely acceptable, because even a small, 9-10 student also can do this kind of graphs. So when we are doing extensive research,
Mhm.
then we can make this better little.
So what should be done?
Mm,
You're very correct. If 9th, 10th student, not only 9th, 10th, now it's a 7th standard or 6th standard student
yes.
can do this.
So we can use even line graphs along with this.
What is the difference? Only the way of the graph is only changing. No? So it's instead
So
of
we can use the other statistical methods, no?
what methods?
That can be used.
What methods? So how many of you have done the primary data collection? Tell me. Have you done some primary data collection and some study based on the primary data? Hello? Anyone of you? I'm sure many of you must have done it. See, when I said any data whichever is available, whether it's a secondary data or primary data, it is assumed that the data is distributed. Some distribution, the data follows some distribution. Now, how we come to know what distribution is being observed for data? How we come to know? Do you know what distributions are there? Normal distribution is there. Correct?
Normal distribution, chi-square distribution.
Yeah, chi-square distribution is there. Then Poisson distribution. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Binomial distribution is there.
Yes, sir.
So all these are types of distribution, correct? So how we come to know what data we are dealing with? Maybe some variable you have selected, okay? Have you tested while before going for any research, what is the distribution that data is following? Have you tested this or just carried the research? Tell me. It's a very fundamental question.
So normality test is done, no?
Yeah, it is done, but how many of we have done it? Whatever data.
Sir, I'll accept the fact. I've just submitted my minor research project. Now there is a primary data collection, and one of my colleague was a statistician along with. So I was to start with the analysis and all that, but then the question he asked, the way you are asking, that have you done the normality test? So I was like, what is that? So then he helped me out doing that, but frankly speaking, personally I have not done like. But then I understood one thing, that there is a relationship between the digits, numbers. And if that is not equally distributed, the relation is not well defined, then whatever test we may apply, or it may not give you the correct results. That's what I understood.
Okay. See, what happens is that we are very casual in all handling the data actually.
Absolutely, sir. Because the moment he asked, I was wondering what is normality test. That question itself is big thing. Okay, just drawing the graphs is not enough, or just doing mean median is not enough. Which test to apply again depends on the what kind of data is distributed in which way.
No, actually, we are not at fault. Our teachers are at fault, correct?
Right. Our teachers are at fault in the right sense, sir, because when they are teaching us, we are not paying attention, sir. And now we have become a teachers in that sense, sir.
Okay, I understood that. But what happens is that, see, Harsh knows me very well. I have been teaching to the students. Then, whenever I teach, now I spend almost if I am starting some, for example, a module or something very important topic, then my large time is spent on introduction. Now also I am spending a large time on introduction here. Do you know why? Do you know why? This is not good teaching method actually. The teaching method, it says that you should distribute your time very scientifically, and you should end up your discussion introduction in 10 minutes, maybe if it is 50 minutes lecture session, and then you should have the body of the lecture. Then you have some time for the discussion, sometimes for the questions and answers and all that. Generally, this is what we follow. But what I understood in last 22, 23 years is that as a student, if I don't know why I am studying this, I don't get motivated to study. Okay, it does not it just not push me to study and concentrate it. Even whenever I start with anything, then my large time I spent on introduction. The reason is that if we come to know why I am studying this, that if I seriously understood, then I think half the work is done. And then you have to only just give the guidance, the direction, how to learn that then. Okay. I think this is very important, as we are all at the higher education level. Now here we are not to just finish the syllabus. We are here to motivate them to study, just bring them in the studies. And unless we give the relevance of the topics, why you are studying all this, I think we are missing a very important component of our teaching. And so I'm trying to bring all of you that why you did this first of, why I should do this. Okay, what is the relevance of that? If I know that, I think the purpose is solved. Otherwise, we will be just doing the things, and we don't know why we have done it. Do you want to do that? Okay. So as you rightly said that after finishing, you just took help of your friend statistician, and he asked you whether you have carried the normality test. Whether normality test is required to be carried for every data distribution or every data. Now here we know that these are the 5 answers which you may get from the households, correct? So the null hypothesis, it says that you should get the equal distribution of this 800 household, that 160 should give the very high, 160 should say high, 160 should say moderate, 160 should say low, 160 should say very low. This is chi-square distribution. Okay. Now, if this is chi-square distribution, then I should I should do the ANOVA test for this. Whether the responses are equally distributed or not. Okay. And once I carry this ANOVA test, and if ANOVA test validates that they are equally distributed, then I say that there is no difference between the response given for the high, very high, high, or moderate, low, and very low. So all households, they have revealed equally if my ANOVA test says that, and they are not we can say discriminatory in terms of the responses. So air pollution is not being very high or very low. So the perceived outcome from the households, it does not lead you to get some conclusion, correct? But if ANOVA test validates that among the responses, the households, they say that that is significant household, number of households say that there is high air pollution. If it is validated by the ANOVA test, then only you can conclude the inferences that among the households, there is a large number of households, they say that there is high pollution, high air pollution. This is what is conclusion. So whenever we make use of any quantitative research tool, whether it's a primary data or secondary, one should be very careful enough what statistics we are making use of. If we don't know, many times the students, they come with the question, what statistics I should make use of? Now this question, it makes us to jump what they have learned then in the course. Okay, because if we don't know what we are dealing with the data and what we are just following the statistics, I think this is where is very important to understand. Whenever we study something, we should go through the examples in that how these examples are designed and what they talk about. We should read these examples. And when these examples are read, then we can say that the comparative, as a similar type of studies, comparable studies can be fit in that particular statistical technique. And so we should follow that. Okay. And then one can just, but what happens is that we many times we just go through some studies, and then we see that these are the methodologies followed by them, and then we follow the same. But many times we don't go into the details of the statistical techniques, why this technique is to be followed and why the other should not be. And that's what I think we need to be very careful enough. Whenever we come across any new methodology, one should understand the very basic fundamentals and the principles underlying for the usage of that statistical technique. Okay, is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so when I was talking about the data and every type of data is distributed, maybe binomially, maybe Poisson distribution, maybe chi-square distribution, maybe normal distribution. So one should first attempt, after having any data for any variable, one should check what distribution is followed for that data. Okay, whether it's a normal distribution or chi-square or Poisson or binomial. Now, depending upon that, you can take a call what statistical method be used. Unless you carry this test, if you do the statistics, there are chances. I don't say that that would be wrong, but there are chances of getting something wrong interpretation and inference. Okay, which may be questioned by the reviewers then later. Many times you must have seen that why you have done why you have not done this. This type of questions are asked. So I think this is a very important thing whenever we carry anything, any quantitative research technique or methodology. When we make use, one should be very careful enough. Uh, I am not creating fear. I am just telling you to read more, to apply appropriately, because it's a very important thing. Otherwise, what happens is that we carry everything, and at the end, someone evaluates that, and then they say कि अरे ये तो wrong हो गया, ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए था. Simple graph is not the answer. Okay, simple graph is not the answer. You should go for the ANOVA test for such a you can say any study where you have some primary data. Maybe, for example, if I say even the characteristics of the data when you define, then you say that there are some male and female population. Okay, and among these 800, 600 were male and 200 were female. Now, can you say without having any statistical test that male were more than the female? Can you state such a statement? Without making any scientific we can say calculation. Can you do that? Again, here null hypothesis is that among the responses, male and female responses are equal. So you should have 400 and 400. It is expected. So it is again the chi-square distribution. Okay. Is that clear? So the null hypothesis is that the responses are equally distributed. And if you reject the null hypothesis by the ANOVA test or t-test, you can do it whatever way you want. Then one can say that yes, the chi-square test also can be, here chi-square test can be used. Okay. So chi-square test can be used, and here also and here also. And then you can say that the distribution is equal or not. And then one should have this statement. But generally it is not. You must have seen that generally we don't do all these things. We just write very and if it is, for example, if it is 560 and 340 or 425 and 375. Now in each case, okay, the total is 800, but in each case your chi-square results would be different. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
So if I say this is one sample, this is second sample, and this is third sample, and then all these three samples, they may give you different, not all, but at least two answers will be there, whether they are equal or not equal. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so I'm coming back to, we make use of mean, we make use of standard deviation, we make use of correlation and regression. Do you know on what assumption these are based on? Anyone? What is the assumption? When you accept the mean, then what is the assumption?
That they are normally distributed, sir.
The assumption is that the mean for the data or the variable, what you computed, that variable is normally distributed. Okay. The correlation, if you have established, then what variables you are making, they are normally distributed. When you're computing the regression, it is assumed that if we are saying that y is function of x and y equals to alpha plus beta x plus ui, okay, and here you are defining some regression of y on x, then x and y both are assumed to be normally distributed, and for that, what do you say? Ui is normally distributed. Okay. When ui is normally distributed, it means that yi and xi are normally distributed. Okay. Is that clear? Hello. Now don't ask me this. Shall I explain all this? Why ui is normally distributed? Huh? Hello. So what I am trying to just give you the precautions in the research techniques whenever we carry, because very blindly we follow because everyone is doing, so I am doing. That is the reason is given by the students. Actually, one should be very careful while making use of statistics. Nothing wrong in making use of statistics, and that is what we are the researchers. With the help of statistics, we try to take the inferences and uh, try to establish some findings, correct? And so we say that the data must be normally distributed if we want to make use of mean, standard deviation, correlation, regression, or all the techniques what are there. Even if you are making use of time series regression or whatever we are making use of, that in all such data sets, or that what we can say, the techniques involve the data sets, though the data sets may be different, again, because the data types are there. So the data can be cross section, the data can be time series data, the data can be panel data, and for all it is assumed that the data is normally distributed. So whole of the econometrics, what we study, or statistics, very basic premise is for that, largely for all the techniques, it is assumed that the data is normally distributed, except where the binomial distribution is there, chi-square distribution is there, and the Poisson distribution is there. If the chi-square distribution is there, then among the, we can say, the alternatives, it is assumed that the data is equally distributed. In binomial also, it is assumed that it is a mutually exclusive data, and so this binomial distribution is there. And for the Poisson distribution, again, we follow some specific distribution. So here what is important is that one has to understand what all these distributions are. And that's why in statistics, one whole module is there on this. This is the basic, you can say, reason to understand the data and the distribution. And if we know the data and distribution, if we read a line by line everywhere, the precautions are given that this you can do, this you can't do, you should follow this, you should not follow this, and all that. So if we are careful enough in understanding that, and I think we can minimize our errors in computations in the quantitative research, and we can have some fruitful results later. So it's very important to understand all this. And so I'm coming back to very important component now. When we do all these mean, standard deviation, correlation, regression, time series regression, then the higher techniques like panel data regression, logic models or the probit models, all these models, they assume that some of the other distribution is followed. Even for normal simple and multiple regressions, we know that the normal distribution for the variables is assumed. Whereas in the logit and probit, it depends on whether the binomial distribution or sometimes chi-square distribution also is being observed. So whether that is being known, and then you follow the the statistics, that I think that would give you appropriate way of testing the data and the appropriate techniques, and then no one can question the research you have carried. Else what will happen is that you need not to explain everything, that this data is normally distributed and all that. One test is sufficient enough. So you have carried that, and when you are making use of mean, it is assumed that the data is normally distributed. And if that is test is not carried, then there is problem. So this is the care what you have to follow. Because here, if I have for example, if I want to say that I will measure the mean of that, okay, mean of all these observations, and I will see my mean will lie in somewhere classification, correct? Mean is 160, and 160 is closer to this moderate, correct or not? 160 is closer to this moderate. Then shall I say that, and why I should have these observations instead of observations? This 800 itself, it says that it should be around 160. My average should be around 160, correct? And if I say that this is closer to my actual mean, and so I should say that the large population or the average population says that there is moderate air pollution. Shall I say that? This is wrong interpretation, correct? Correct or not? So here mean will not work because it's not normal distribution. Okay? Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shall I continue? So,
Yes, sir.
So what we were talking about, whether the data is normally distributed or not, and what does it mean then? What is the meaning of normally distributed? Anyone wants to tell me what is normally distributed? How we come to know? There are around 28 people, correct? Now I want to make all work here, okay?
Yes,
In chat box, everyone has to put their age. Everyone. One small exercise we want to make. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, I'm getting some responses. (41) and 38. So 2 responses I got, 41, 38. If I compute the mean of this 2 observations, then 41 plus 38 divided by 2, it would be 39.5. If I have the third observation in this, Harsh, will you help me? Third observation.
Yes, sir. Next is 35.
35. So if we compute X bar, 41 plus 38 plus 35 divided by 3, it would be 38. And what is fourth observation?
It's 24, sir.
24. Fifth,
It's 35, sir.
35. Shall I directly write?
Yes, sir.
So I'm adding up, okay? So I'm continuing this exercise. 173 divided by 5, 5 3 is a 15. Sixth observation. Sixth observation. Harsh,
Sorry, it's 45. 45, sir.
45. Seventh,
It's 50.
50.
Yes.
Eighth,
It's 48.
ninth,
25.
10th.
So that was the last response in the chat box.
Only 9 have given the responses.
The other participants kindly send your age in the chat box. Other participants, those who have not sent their age, please respond. The next is 36. Santosh. Next is 36, sir. Dear participants, kindly send your age in the chat box. Dear participants, those who have not responded, send your age in the chat box.
ये हम किसी का एज नहीं पूछ रहे.
Yes, we don't mind if it is not the real age of yours.
Your actual age नहीं रहेगा तो भी चलेगा. Please don't worry about it. At least कुछ तो age reveal कर दो बस. 2-3 साल 4 साल नीचे आपने छोटा कम भी दे दिया तो भी चलेगा।
So 36 and 45.
36 and 45. 36 calculated, I think 45.
45, 48 years.
See, what you will realize is that as you will add up the ages and just compute the mean, okay, larger would be the n, larger would be the n, closer would be the realistic, or we can say the realistic average, realistic average. Larger would be n, that is number of observations. More, we can say acceptable average. Okay, so it is assumed that this n, when approaches to 30, okay, number of observations, when n approaches to 30, then whatever average would be there, that average would be true in 95% of the cases. 95% of the cases, when n approaches to 30, that number of observations, now here there are 12 observations, correct? When this observations continues to 30, and when we compute the x bar, then this x bar would be representative. This would be representative in 95% of the cases. Only in 5% of the cases. So if you take such, we have taken one sample of 30 people, okay? Likewise, if you take 100 sample, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 100 samples, okay? And for each sample, when you calculate the mean, in 95% cases of the cases, for 95% of the cases, x bar will remain the same. Are you able to understand what I am trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
I'm telling you that if we have n up to 30, that is number of observations, and whatever then x bar would be there, that would be treated as a representative. So it should be accepted. Why it should be accepted? If it follows the normal distribution, then only it should be accepted. And it is assumed that it follows, because the reason is that such samples, we have taken only one sample of this class only. Forget about this class. You take the second we can say sample, you take third sample, and likewise you take 100 such samples. In 95% of the cases, your mean would remain around that mean only, okay? And in 5% of the cases, it is possible that this will not be your actual mean, okay? Something different mean you will get. So why, that is why it is treated as in at 95% level of significance. The meaning of this is that if you carry the same activity for 100 samples, in 95% of the times you will get this particular x bar. So for example, if we calculate and continue to calculate, and if we get the x bar here in our case for the number of observations, I think 29, 29 people. We say that it is around 30. So we will add it to 1 and 30. We will say these are 30 people. And for 30 people, if the average age is 37, then in 95% cases for such a class, your X bar would remain 37. Okay. And so you should say that for such a sample, the average mean is 37, not 31, not 32. But one more thing is here is that then what is the average age of the population? The average age of the population, it is assumed that for that matter, it is assumed for this sample, if it is 37, then average age of the population is also here treated as it is 37. So what you, because this sample is from the total population. So if I draw the conclusions for this sample, these conclusions apply for the population as well. Now to say that, okay, that what we are done, for example, if I say I have calculated the per capita income, for example, for Thane district. Okay. Now here, if I get 32,000 rupees as per capita income, if I get, we don't have any such data, but I am just telling you one example. If we get that per capita income is nothing but the average income of the population in Thane. Okay. So here per capita income of Thane is, for example, 32,000. Now shall I say that this 32,000 is the per capita income of Maharashtra as well? Or shall I say that this is the per capita income of India? Can I say that?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Can we say that?
No, sir.
So can we test for that what is the Maharashtra's per capita income? For example, Maharashtra's per capita income is to say 29,000. Okay. Now I know that per capita income of Maharashtra is 29,000, per capita income of Thane is 32,000, and per capita income of India is to say 24,000. Can I conclude that all these three are same or equal? Or not? Can I say that the per capita income Thane, Maharashtra and India is equal?
No, sir.
No.
Thane is one of the district of Maharashtra, and Maharashtra is larger than India is larger than Maharashtra.
No, that is okay. But whether I can conclude based on the information, now the information is available.
Right.
So with the given information, can I conclude that the per capita income in Thane, Maharashtra and India are different or equal?
Different, sir.
How can I say equal or different?
Sir, if as Madam said that India is a nation, Maharashtra again is a district, and Thane is part of Maharashtra, sir. But the standard of living of the people in Thane is that of different than all over India, and if we consider in Maharashtra.
Okay.
This is one what we can think in a common point of view.
Okay. So this is per capita income of Thane. This is per capita income of India. Okay. And this is per capita income of Maharashtra, correct? So have you some information, more information is there? we have missed that information. Actually, we are just looking at the per capita income. We can't conclude anything from the given information, whether they are different or equal. We can't do anything here. The reason is that these are all averages, correct? When we have averages, then we can conclude the test for significant difference between the averages or not. Okay. Is that clear?
Yes, in this case, I think we have to run some ANOVA test, and accordingly we have to find out.
Simply we can just run t-test.
Sorry, it was t-test. Yes.
Yeah. So test can be carried that xi minus, sorry, xt minus xm first, to say that these are two different. Okay. Correct. And then the sigma of the population, whatever is there, if we have a standard error, sorry, standard error of sigma. Okay. And then we can just test for t-test, and then we can say whether they are significantly different or not, because standard error, it gives you the standard deviation and the error correction. Okay. And then it says that, because though we say that Thane, the per capita income in Thane is 32, but there must be some range of the per capita income which is acceptable. 95% of the 95% region, it lies in that. So 95% of the population, it comes in that particular region, and that region may be, for example, I'm just giving you the range. For example, if I say it is 28,000 to 34,000, if this is the range, if I get from the data, and 95% of the population or the households in Thane, they have the income in the range of 28 to 34,000, and in Maharashtra you have to say 26,000 to 31,000. Okay. Now this is the range in which 95% of the households they lie. Average is this, but the 95% of the households, they have income in this particular range. Okay. Now in that case, one can conclude that the per capita income in Thane and Maharashtra is same. Okay. Now that is done with the help of t-test. And unless we carry the t-test, one should not conclude hurriedly just looking at the figure, because one has to, that's what I in our earlier lecture I told you, one should know what is this concept, measurement. Okay. Per capita income is nothing but the average income. And average income means something is there, X bar is there. And if it is X bar, then it is statistical measure. Okay. And that measure needs to be scientifically compared. Okay. Is that clear? And if we hurriedly do such statements, I'm telling you, now here in India, everything is being carried. Chalo yaar jaane do, kuch to kiya hai. So we believe in that people are doing something, so we motivate them. But scientifically, whether we should do this or not. Okay. Many times, to be very frank, Mumbai School of Economics is criticized that they are very rigid people. Okay. They are very unnecessary. They are strict enough to have. Harsh knows that well. Harsh had done his PhD at our department. So Harsh knows that they revision and revision and revision. They continue. And unless we get assured that all is scientific, we do not allow the students to submit. Now, why all these things are there? Why we should do this? And what is harm in being more scientific than what we do generally? Don't you think that we make use of these quantitative methods, okay, but whether we do it seriously and scientifically? Okay, if these two questions are addressed, and I think I'm motivating all of you, please do take care of these two things. And if we are able to do this, I deliberately took some random problems and tried to convince you that many a times we just do these statistics. We don't know or we don't follow. Many a times you're not at fault. I told you, you're not at fault at all. What is important is that is a discussion. We can have a dialogue with the people, those who are expert in the field. We can take the help of the experts, have discussion with them, and learn as many as possible so that our research becomes more profound and scientific. You see, in scientific, in social sciences, I'm on Indian Economic Journal, and I have seen that rejection rate is around 48% in Indian Economic Journal. Why, you know? 48% rejection rate is very serious, don't you think?
There might be some methodological issues, sir.
Largely, I find all our because we also have the meetings among us. We have 5 associate editors at Indian Economic Journal. Okay, and we have frequently the meetings, largely 4-5 months. After 4-5 months, we meet together along with the chief editor, and we discuss all these issues. And we try at our best level to reduce the errors. But what can we do? Directly we can't get associated with any author or any researcher, correct? What we try to do from our own way, we have done for the Indian Economic Association this year when it was at Jaipur. We had a session for that why the rejection rate is high. What are the reasons for that? And we had presented 3 people. We have presented myself and 2 of my colleagues at Indian Economic Journal. We had presented that what are the reasons for the rejection, and largely the reasons were methodological. Okay, so it is for one journal. I don't say, I don't conclude and I don't generalize, because I understand that there are journals which are not using the rigorous statistics. Their rejection rate may be low compared to Indian Economic Journal, because they have their own philosophy and the scope of the journals. Okay. But what I understand, as far as the Scopus journals are there worldwide, many of my friends, they get successful in getting published. But what I have understanding, because there were 2 meetings with 2 Scopus journals with our Indian Economic Journal, because we wanted to have this in the Scopus. And then what they have revealed, they presented that for being at the Scopus, our papers must be methodologically sound. Okay. And from India, in recent years, that's 1 or 2 years, the publication in Scopus journals have increased. But if we look at the history, then they are very, very low in compared to the other developed countries, that is the European and US continent. So what I request to all of you, please, whatever you do it seriously and scientifically. And if we are able to do it, I think our rejection rate is very, very low then. Our papers have to be assessed and papers have to be sent to the reviewers. Reviewers may give the valuable comments, and then one can publish in good journals also. I think time is around to just finish. If questions are there, then we can take the questions, and then we can conclude.
Dear participants, if you have any question, can ask.
Sir, I want to ask one thing that in researches, the statistic is having its own crucial place, sir. But still we are lacking in all the statistical fields. So is Mumbai University Statistics Department is having such type of courses where we can fulfill all these lacunas in our research?
Yeah, it is there, and I would suggest just on your YouTube also, you will find
Okay.
many useful material is there.
Unless and until we go for all these things or we prepare selfly, we can't get the conceptual clearance for this thing.
The problem is with the YouTube videos is that they don't give you the causal things, that why you are doing this and that. Directly just teach that particular component, but where to use, how to use, what limitations are there, what care should be taken while using, all these things you need to, for that, all these things you need to read the books.
Okay.
That will help you. So understanding one concept or one component or one method is okay, but
applicability.
After understanding that concept, I would suggest to read the books in which such methods are used, and also the work which is cited in the book. Many times you see the books give the references, and we don't we are not that actually we are not given the we can say direction by our seniors or by our teachers that how to improve our skills. Because many times what happens is that we just read the book and we just forget about the references.
Right.
What happens is that in references you will learn as many as things, and that particular component you may be only able to apply, but application part you can learn from the references. So I would say, and that is what the motivation is, that why references are given. Many times we lose or we miss the philosophy of the research. See, I am not here to just give all the perspectives. Okay, philosophy of the research is that whenever you have anything, when you read and write anything, when you write anything, you are motivating the reader to read as much as possible. Okay, because you are giving citations. Why you give citations? Not to only strengthen your argument, but if the reader is interested to know more about that cited material, cited thing, what you have cited, if reader is more interested in that, so reader must be motivated to read that. Okay, so why we do this citation is not only for the sake of strengthening of our research, but also we try at our level to motivate the reader to read the original document. Okay, actually the purpose of citation is this, and many times we forget that, and we just try to just get the information from the Google and all that. Many times whatever Google gives us the references, I'm not talking about Google websites and all that, I'm talking about the references. Many times we get very good papers also, even Google Scholar gives good papers, but whether they are sufficient enough. There are databases which are more reliable and scientific, like Web of Science is there. Okay, So if we make use of the Web of Sciences or Crossref, or there are many such web databases where we can get the core of the papers, large, we can say the database there. And if we just see which papers are highly cited, all this is possible in Web of Sciences. Okay, one can just search for a term, key term, and then you can just get the references. But among the references, you can get the latest one, oldest one, highly cited, highly relevant, and all that. These all we can say classifications you can carry, and then you can make use of this particular cited material, reference material, and which will strengthen not only the quality of your work, but also you will be motivating the readers in scientific way. That's what I can just tell you. Anything else?
So, participants, do you have any question? Okay. So, I think we have come to the end of this session, Kote sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kote sir, for this wonderful, very informative session. I now request Professor Tushar Pawar sir to propose a formal vote of thanks. Tushar sir.
Thank you, Anaya madam. On behalf of organizing committee, 10 days virtual research methodology workshop funded by ICSSR, I extend my gratitude to Dr. Satyanarayan Kote sir for accepting our invitation and taking session in our workshop. I think your expertise will help the participants and us as well. All the methods which you have thought, statistical tools, that of course will help us in analyzing our research and statistically help our research to conclude and prepare our reports. A really very useful session which conducted by Dr. Kote sir. I really thankful to you, sir. And we also look forward such many sessions in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tushar sir. Kote sir, I request you to present the first slide of your contact number and email ID to share with participants.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my email ID. I'm just writing here.
Kote sir?
Yeah, I'm
Sharing.